Welcome back to another episode of Gift from Adversity. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we are recording episode 101. I'm very excited that we surpassed 100 episodes and we are having more guests. Before I introduce tonight's guest, I want to introduce my book, which is the same title as this podcast. It's called A Gift from Adversity. The subtitle of my book is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. If you go to Amazon and type A Gift from Adversity by Juri, Juri, love, you can easily find it. After I published my book in 2020, I got a lot of messages from all over the world, and people are sharing their situations and stories. And last year, I felt very compelled to create a space where people can share their adversities, but not only that, to share their tools that they use to overcome and a gift that came from it. So I'm very grateful to have many guests from all over the world. So let's invite our guest tonight. Hi, Alyssia. Thank you so much for coming to our guest tonight.
Hi, sorry, I'm having mine's
Alyssia.
lagging,
Thank you so
so
much
I don't know if
for coming to our guest tonight.
Hi, sorry, I'm having mine's lagging,
Thank you so
so
much
I don't know if
for
I'm
our guest tonight.
Hi, sorry, I'm
Okay.
having
Can you hear me good?
mine's
Thank
lagging,
you so
so
much
I don't know if
for our guest tonight.
Hi, sorry, I'm having
Can you hear me good?
mine's lagging,
Thank you so much.
I don't know
It's
if I'm
repeating.
sorry, it just keeps repeating.
Yeah.
Okay, I noticed when it started, it's
It just
delayed.
keeps repeating. Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
see if I can just try to answer and then let it go, and then I'll respond.
Yeah.
See if I can just try to answer and then let it go, and then I'll respond. Let me see. Maybe if I try to.
Oh, now it's fixed.
That's better.
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Okay, we're good now. There we go.
Good. Welcome to the live show.
It's live.
Yes. So, Alyssia, can you introduce your name, where you're coming in from today, and what you do, and if you have any social media or anything that you want to promote?
Sure. My name is Alyssia Jennings. I am coming from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And currently, I work as a manager with H&R Block. So our season is almost over. Yay, tax season almost done. Make sure you get your taxes done. I do have social media. Pretty much all of my social medias are Alyssia Star, which is my middle name, Starr. It has 2 R's. So everything that is my social media is my first name, Alyssia, my middle name, Star.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming into A Gift from Adversity podcast, episode 101.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Great. So we met on Clubhouse.
Yes, we did. We did. We met in the mental health room that they were having.
So my 100th episode, Milton Young, I met him through Clubhouse as well.
Oh, wow.
Long time ago,
Yeah.
but we became really good friends.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's wonderful. Sometimes Clubhouse is a great platform to network.
Yes, it is. I've met a lot of great people, including yourself, on Clubhouse, and it started out not so great. I didn't know kind of what rooms to go into. So I was kind of getting some of the really crazy rooms, but then it was like I kind of researched a little bit more. And then I started meeting the people that were, more genuine and nice and kind.
So, Alyssia, let's dive into the first question, which is the adversity. So, can you tell our audience what was your adversity?
So I feel like there's more than one. I have a lot. Um, I'm a single mom of three. My first adversity initially was when I had my first daughter, who is now 17. Um, then she was 9 months old. My boyfriend and I, we decided to move in together to an apartment. And previously to us moving in, I mean, he had, you know, done little things of domestic violence here and there. But I feel like at that time, I had that mindset of, just a domestic violence victim where you just always think that it's just going to stop that last time and it's not going to keep going and going and going. But unfortunately, um, I got myself a full-time job and he worked part-time at a restaurant just like right up the street. So after I got off work and I picked up our daughter from daycare, um, I could pick him up from work and then we could go straight home. So one night we got into an argument. Um, thought that I had he thought that I had done something. I don't remember what he thought that I did, but we got into an argument and I remember he spit on me and then he punched me. So I instantly called the police. And so when they got there, he was already gone. He had ran. So my mom, she took me to like the courts downtown. We have courts downtown. And if it's after hours, you can go to the courts and you can get an emergency PFA, which is protection from abuse. So we went down there. It was nighttime. We got that. And he ended up coming back that night. And my mom stayed with me. And luckily, she stayed with me because I told him, like, you're not allowed to be here. Here's your paper, because he had to be served. They're not, the thing about the PFA is that they're not good unless they're served. So if he didn't have that paper, he was still allowed to be there. And I was scared because I would have been by myself with my baby. So my mom was there and I said, you need to go get your things and you need to leave the key on the dresser. Of course, being young and naive, I just assumed he got his things and left the key on the dresser, which was not the case. So the next day I had a procedure to get done. So I had to be up really, really early. And I remember I got up and after a little bit, I was just like kind of waking up and you know how you're groggy in the morning. So you're just kind of like coming out of that sleep. And I heard a knock on the door. And I'm thinking to myself, like, who would be knocking at my door? We've only lived here maybe like a month or two. I don't know who would even know that I'm here. So I went to the door, and of course, it was him. So he came in, and I said, I don't know what you're doing here. Like, you're not allowed to be here. Um, our daughter's waking up. And so if you just want to go get her, you can go get her and, give her her bottle for breakfast. Well, that's when he just flipped. It was like that little sentence triggered him, and he just screamed, and he was just like, I know and I won't use the swear word, but I know the effing dad routine. And it just snowballed from there. And it was just 8 hours of constant, just verbal and physical abuse. And it was terrible. He did let me get in the shower. Initially, he didn't let me put clothes on. He told me that I needed to stay undressed and be disgusting how I was. And eventually he let me put some clothes on. I just had on just like a regular t-shirt and some like little sweatpants. And I remember my daughter had on a onesie. And I remember he started like cutting his arm, which is really weird. He started cutting his arm, so there was kind of like a little bit of blood on like my walls. And I remember saying, like, stop that. Like, why are you doing that? Why are you hurting yourself? And he's like, you're the only person who ever made me do this. And so eventually, when he had stopped cutting his arm, I went to pick up the knife and he's like, good. He's like, now your fingerprints are on it. So when the police come, I can say that it was self-defense and that you were trying to stab me with that knife. And I'm like, in my head, I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, like this was planned. Like he planned this, like the things he kept saying. So he kept us inside of my bedroom, which was like down the hall and to the right. And he kept us in there pretty much for everything, like the whole entire day. He took my cell phone. I didn't know where anything was. Eventually, my daughter stopped crying. Eventually, he started like calming down because he had like thrown a hammer at me. It hit me right here. Luckily, he didn't throw it super hard. So it just kind of, hit me and then it fell. Um, and she was crying because he kept trying to argue with me, but put her back in the crib. And so finally, I just said, stop putting her in there. She's scared. She's crying. She's 9 months old. So we go in the room, and finally, from whatever he was on, he started to mellow down. And eventually, it was time for her to eat again. And I said, why are you doing this? Like, I just don't understand. Why are you doing this? And he said, the devil told him to do it to me. Um, and so once he finally, like, really was just kind of like out, when you just kind of like pass out from being drunk or whatever he was on, he passed out. And I remember asking him, can I go make a bottle? And he said, yeah. And he wasn't paying attention. And as I was going into the kitchen, I seen the cell phone sticking out a little bit from under the bed. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And in my head, there's like 20 million things going on in your head. Like, how do you get the cell phone without him seeing? Or, I need to get that cell phone. So I'm in the kitchen and I'm like ruffling with everything. And I just thought to myself, okay, just pretend to trip and fall and get the phone. So I did. And I gave her the bottle. She was at an age to where she could, feed herself, and she was feeding herself. And slowly I was hitting the volume button so that I could turn the volume up a bit, because back then, the flip phones, you could hear every time you hit that button, like for the number dialing. And so I didn't want him to hear that. So I was trying to hide it and like put it under a pillow or something. And I called my sister, and I remember I had to tell her, I was like, please, I was like, he has me hostage. I need you to call 911 and I need you to get the police here. And she's like, what? What's going on? Like, what do you mean? And I'm like, please, I'm like, just send them to this address. And I just need you to do this for me. She's like, okay, okay. So she called 911, and I guess she called my mom. My mom's friend left with her from work, and they rushed over there. And finally, I just said, okay, she's done eating. I called his name a few times. He didn't answer. And that's when I was like, it's go time. Like, this is it. We either stay and I don't know what's going to happen, or I get her and we run, and that's it. So I got her and I like walked slowly to the living room. I got my keys, I had my cell phone, and I had her, and that was it. I opened the door and I just like ran down the steps. Like, I don't know how I didn't fall down the steps with my baby. I don't know. And I remember I unlocked the car door because I was in front of the building. So I had to go down the steps and around. There was like rocks everywhere. I had no shoes on. She didn't have shoes on. I got to my car, I opened the door and I set her down. And I remember as I set her down, the police and all the ambulance were coming this way. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I like actually made it out of there after 8 hours. And they got there and they were like, where's he at? Where's he at? I said, he's still up in there. He's still up in there. And so they were holding my head like this for a long time. Because at one point when we were arguing, we had went into the kitchen because I had taken the knife in the kitchen to put it in the sink because it was on the floor and I didn't want the baby to get it. So he had taken my head like this, but he was facing me and he was pushing my head back like this and like banging my head off of the stove. So they didn't want me to move my neck because they didn't know if I had like, a head injury or anything like that. But I remember the biggest thing that day was whenever I was in the hospital and I was like laying there with that just like neck brace on, my dad came in. And I remember I saw my dad's face and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I can't make this decision anymore. Can't do it. And so my family saw me. And I remember that day I was like, I will never go through this again. I'll never, put myself in a situation to be held like that and just stuck to where like you're so scared you don't know what's going to happen. So that was number one. Number two, I had broken up with my fiance. I was with for 5 years, which um, I broke up with him because he was in and out of jail and prison, and I did it for 5 years. It was a lot of just mental, just too much for me. So I had started dating, and I remember I used like a online dating site or something. And I remember I seen a guy on there, but then I seen him on Facebook. And I remember I saw that we had like mutual friends in common. And so I had like reached out and was like, "Hey, I think you're handsome," or whatever. And it was just like very rare because I'm the type of person like if I reach out to you, that means like I'm not shy. By any means, I am not a shy person. So we talked for a little bit, but then things didn't really happen. And then like a few months later, he reached out again and was like, "Can I take you out on a date?" And I was like, "Sure." You don't think anything. So I can remember I lived with my parents at the time. And I remember I had gotten myself all done up and I had my hair done, my makeup. And I remember my dad said to me, which my dad is a pastor, my dad said to me, "What are you going on a date for? You don't need to go on a date." And he just said to me, "Something doesn't feel right." And every single time something has happened, my dad has always told me something. Like he didn't want me to be with anybody I've been with pretty much up until not that long ago, but I still went. I was like, "Dad, I'll be fine. It's nothing. We're just going for a drink. We're not doing anything, out of the ordinary." So, I remember he said he didn't have a car. So I pulled up and I texted him and I said, "I'm outside. You can come down now." And so he got in. He was like, "Hi." I was like, "Hi." Because like I said, I'm not a nervous person. I had already, I was the first one to reach out, so it wasn't like I was scared. I had known the area because my best friend at the time had lived in that area, so I kind of knew where I was. But I said, like, "Where did you want to go? What did you want to do?" And he was like, "Well," I was like, "I don't really know what's over here. I only know a few of these bars, that are along the street." And he's like, "Well, I know one. I'll take you to it." I was like, "Okay." So he kind of just, guided me as he like verbally gave me the directions. And when we walked in, it was kind of like this dive bar, and it was really weird because I would have never thought that he would bring me to this kind of like bar. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, this is weird. And it's not a place that I would ever think someone would bring me on a date. So I was like, okay, strike one, like dating in your head. And so then we like walked back. And I remember he kind of like knew people in there. So that made me kind of feel a little bit better after we walked in. And then there was like a little area. If you went just around the corner, there was a little area you could sit. And I had seen people just sitting there and drinking and talking. And so it seemed okay. So he's like, "Yeah, this is so and so, the bartender. He's the best bartender or whatever." And he's like, "Well, what do you want to drink?" And I was like, "I don't really want anything right now. I kind of like to, see like my scene and see what happens." And so he got a drink, like a shot or something, and drank it really fast. And I was like, "Wow, okay." And he's like, "Come on." He's like, "Get your drink." So I remember I think I said like a something iced tea or something. And he's like, "Okay." And so we went in the back, like a little round the corner. And then there was steps that like went upstairs. I guess there was an upstairs to the bar. I never went up there. He said, I'm going to go up there and see like if there's, any more people up there or if it's any better up there than it is down here. Because there was just a couple people. There was like a group at 2 tables. And so we sat down and I drank. And he said, oh, you're babysitting your drink. You know how they say you're babysitting your drink if you're taking a while to drink it? But I'm not a really big drinker. So sometimes when they put a lot of alcohol in there, it's kind of like, like how you can just it has that whole alcohol taste. So I was like, okay. So I kind of just finished that off. And he's like, well, I'm going to go get another drink. Do you want another one? And I was just like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I knew that I could at least drink 2 drinks. I knew that I would be okay to drive home, like if we sat there. And so he got me a drink. And I remember we were just sitting there and talking. And this girl, she came over to our table and she just started randomly talking to us. And then all of a sudden, I was just sitting there at the table and I just felt like this all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, like, wow, I'm feeling like really like when you're really, really drunk and you just start to feel like everything's spinning. And I remember I told him, I was like, I feel really, really drunk right now. And I said, that's really weird because this is only my second drink and it's not a very big cup. And he's like, oh, you're just a lightweight, you can't drink or whatever. And I was like, no, it's just really weird. And he's like, come on. He's like, drink your drink or whatever. And so I just drank it. And he's like, well, you're ready to go? I was like, well, I'm not even done with this drink. And you already paid for this drink. He's like, well, when we leave, put the cup in your coat and I'll like distract the doorman so that he doesn't see that you have the cup in your coat. So I was like, okay. I'm like, I'm stealing the cup though. He was like, it's fine. He was like, people do it all the time. I was like, okay. And so as we leave, I remember he drove because there was no way I was going to be able to drive. At that point, I was like, really like, okay, this is really weird. He kept saying how hungry he was. So we stopped at a gas station that made food, kind of like a Gecko or something that's out now. And he got his food. And I remember we got back to his apartment. And at his apartment, there was a bunch of steps. And I thought, oh my gosh, in these heels, all these steps. So apparently, this whole time, from the bottom of the steps, when we opened the door, he started with his cell phone recording me as we walk up the steps. So we walk up the steps, we go into his apartment, he goes in his kitchen, he starts like kind of fumbling around with his stuff, he starts eating, and I was sitting on the couch. And I remember saying, okay, I'm really, really drunk. Like, I feel really sick. I feel like I'm going to be sick. And he's like, do you think you're going to throw up? He's like, here, take a bag. And I said, I don't know. Like, I just put my head down. And after that, I don't remember anything. I don't remember ever walking into the bedroom. I don't remember anything. The only thing that I remember was waking up the next day. I just left. I mean, I kind of just was like, bye, because I wasn't really interested. Like the bar wasn't really my scene. It was kind of just like a random night. And I was just like, okay, this isn't for me. So I remember at work that whole week, I kept telling them the whole week, oh my gosh, I've never felt hungover for like a week. Every single day that week, I kept saying, I still don't feel right. Monday came, Tuesday came, that whole week, I just felt off. So a few months later, I'm at work and I get this message in Facebook Messenger, and it's one of my friends. And she said, do you know a guy, and she pretty much described him. I was like, yeah. I was like, we went on a date. I was like, but it's nothing serious. She was like, well, call me after work because I have to tell you something and it's really important. And I was like, well, no. I was like, you tell me now because I'm not going to be able to get through the rest of the day at work. Like, I need to know. And she's like, well, there's this video and it starts of you walking up these steps and basically he rapes you and you can tell that you're very, very like, inebriated. I guess you could tell that I was just kind of like this, like really just kind of out of it. And I guess he was just like yelling all these, like, you dumb whore or something like that. Just all these like mean things. I have no idea to this day what happened, what was said. I've never seen the video. I wasn't thinking when she told me because I was just so like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe this is happening. At that point, I already had 2 daughters. I'm like, this is not happening. Like, this is a video of me. He's doing things to me sexually. Like, I have no idea what even happened. And I instantly was like, okay, delete it right now. And she deleted it. And I thought that was the right thing to do. I just thought that it was the right thing to do at the time because I was just like, okay, well, the source of it is like already deleted. So the only other person who would share it would be him. And so I called my mom and she's like, what? She's like, you need to make an appointment. You need to go to the doctors. You need to get checked. Luckily, and thank God I didn't have anything. I didn't have like any STDs or anything bad or anything like that. But I remember thinking, why would you do that? Like, I approached you. Like, if there was anything that was going to happen, I would let it happen if it was going to happen, if I felt like that. Like, you don't need to put something in someone's drink. And I remember just feeling really, really just like gross and disgusting and thinking to myself, what did he do to me? Like, I have no idea. And in my head, sometimes I go back and forth and I think, like, do I want to see the video? Even that day, I just kept thinking, like, do I want to see the video? Don't I want to see the video? Do I want to message him? Do I want to be like, show me the video now? Because I didn't know if it was online. And I remember I went back and I told one of my really good friends at work, and she was like, don't you remember that whole week? She was like, you kept saying, why do I feel like I'm so just hung over? She was like, that was in your system that whole time. And I just look back and just think like there was so many red flags that I could have, avoided, but I didn't think that someone, just like the first time, I never thought that anybody would do something like that to me, um, in that type of way. I didn't press any charges. I just went and got checked. I told my parents, and I didn't know if I could press charges because I had told my friend to delete the video and I didn't have anything and I didn't know how to get it. So I felt as if I went to the police, I didn't have any like evidence to prove that it was like he did this to me. It was almost like in my head, I was thinking about like the shows you watch and it's like, oh, well, that's hearsay. She just told you that this happened. Like, you don't really know. But then the person he had sent it to was my ex that was in prison for a lot of, times. And he had seen it because he had sent it to his Snapchat as well. And he was really upset. And he was like, Alyssia, he did like a really lot of like bad things to you. And he was like crying. And he's not the type of person to cry. Like, he kind of is like that really, I don't know, like the strong man. He always has to be strong. And I remember him just like breaking down and being like, I've never seen anyone do stuff like that to a person. And at that point, I'm just like, okay, so now what do I do? He's seen it. And I was like, well, did you like save it on your Snapchat? He's like, no, I was just going through it. Like, what is this? And why did someone send it to me? And so I'm like, well, great. There's that, because once you watch it on Snapchat, it's gone. I'm like, so that was that. I didn't do anything about it. You know, I've just went back and forth a lot of times in my head, just thinking, should I have said something? Should I have taken him to the police? But at the same time, I've told my story. I told my story to a lot of people. And so he knows. He knows what he did, you know. And unfortunately, he has to go before God and tell God why he did what he did. I don't know why he did what he did. You know, I can't speak for him. And yeah, I just kind of left the police out of it. I said my piece a few times and I've just left it alone. But that was it. And the last one Last one, last one. 2 years ago, my boyfriend at the time, we were very close. We ended up having to move from our home. And being that my dad is a pastor, he could not come to my parents' house because we were not married. We had a baby. My littlest daughter was his daughter. She's now 4. Um, he always called every night. Every night he would, messenger chat my phone, and we would, let him see her on the video. And I remember he just didn't do it a couple nights, and I'm like, what is going on with him? But there was some times where he wouldn't message me because he had like a back injury. So he said that, like if he was in a lot of pain, he just didn't like to, take out his frustration of being in pain on other people. So he would just kind of like, stay to himself, which I understood and I knew. But this was more than like a few days. This was like 5 days. We got to day 5 and I'm like, okay, this is a little much. Like he never goes this long without talking to my daughter. Like my daughter was his everything. So I woke up that morning. I messaged him one last time. I'm like, what is going on? What are you doing? No response for like an hour. I said to my mom, let's go. We're going over there. This is not normal. He doesn't ever just not call. So we drove over there. We get to his apartment building. His car's there, so I'm like, okay. So I go around to the back of the apartment building and I'm knocking on the window and I'm like, come on. Like, where are you at? What are you doing? Like, wake up. Because there's some times where he was in like a deep sleep and you had to really yell to wake him up. I remember it happened when we were in the hospital when I had the baby. I was like, wake up. I was like, oh my gosh, you scared me. I was like, you were not waking up. I was like, you were in like a deep sleep. So I just figured that. I figured he was sleeping in there. So I was banging on the doors. And I remember there was like a little door on the side of the building that sometimes would just be like left, like cracked open. So I was like, oh, please, God, let that be like cracked. Not today. That day it was shut. It was locked. And I remember a little bit prior to that, they were cutting down on the front door being like left open because I guess people that didn't live there were going in and out. So of course, door wasn't cracked open in the front. So oddly, some guy comes up the steps. He looked like he was like a painter or something. And I was like, and I just went in there and I instantly stopped. And I remember looking down the steps because you had to go down the steps through a door and he was right to the right. And I remember I thought, I don't know what stopped me. I mean, maybe it was God. I don't know. But I stopped and I turned and I looked at the guy and I said, can I go in here? I'm like, my boyfriend's down there and I haven't heard from him in days. I'm like, it's not like him. It's really weird. And he's like, well, do you live here? I was like, no, like, he's my boyfriend, but we don't live together right now. I didn't get into the whole story with him because he was just some random guy. And he's like, well, you know what? Just go right outside the door. I'll go down and I'll look. Because I just figured, maybe he had left his door unlocked. And something about his face when he walked up the steps, and I don't know if he looked in there and saw him or if he really just didn't hear him, like he knocked and he just didn't hear. He was like, I'm sorry. He was like, there was like nothing. He was like, but I have the number to like the apartment manager so I can call her for you. He was like, but you might want to call the police. He was like, since you can't get a hold of them. So I called the police. I remember I was crying. And my mom's like, Alyssia, you don't know what's going to happen. He could just be sleeping. I'm like, no, I'm like, this is not like him. I'm like, even like the window, he would go through his window sometimes because that was like right to his living room. And he would like take his groceries like just like that, right? Like that. And I remember he made me laugh when he did that. And I was like, his windows not cracked, like nothing. And so then the police got there and they're like, well, what's going on? What's the issue? Because I was hysterical. Like our daughter was in the car, my mom came with me, and I was like, my boyfriend's in there. I'm like, he hasn't, called me. And I remember we both worked at the same place. And I had messaged my friend and I'm like, has he been online for work at all? Because I was off and I didn't even think to look. And she's like, she got back to me, but it was like, it took her a bit. And she's like, I'm sorry, he hasn't been online in like 6 days. I'm like, what? 6 days? And that's when I was just like, this is not good. Like, I just knew, like, you just have like that gut feeling, like something's not right. This isn't normal. The police came and there was a woman officer that stayed outside with me. And then there was another woman officer and a man that went downstairs to his apartment. And I remember the woman just came back upstairs and she walked over to the right. And I remember whatever the officer and I were saying, I totally shut off because I watched her walk that way. And instantly I knew, and I was like, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? And she was like, I'm sorry to tell you, but he's passed away. And I just like screamed, like my legs just felt like numb. And I was just like, no, he's not. I'm like, he's not. I'm like, he's just sleeping. I'm like, he's tired. And she was like, no, honey, I'm sorry. She's like, I'm sorry to tell you, but he's passed away. And I'm like, well, I need to go in there. I'm like, I need to give him a hug. Like, I need to say goodbye. And she's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, why? Like, let me say goodbye to him. And she said that he had been in there for a few days. So I guess decomposition had already started on his body. And she's like, honey, you don't want your last memory of him to be that. And I was like, I don't care. I don't care. Like, I just want to give him a hug. Like, I want to say goodbye. I just need to like say one last thing. And she's like, honey, I can't let you go in there and see that. And I think a lot of things that are in my mind, I go back and forth with, like, why did this person do that? Or why did that person do that? Or why did I stop at that top of the steps? Why didn't I just keep going and just, you know, I don't know. I don't know. Like I would have I feel like I would have taken that chance. I would have went through the door and I wouldn't have cared. I feel like that inside, but I don't know. Maybe it was God just stopping me. Like, honey, don't go down there. And that's the worst part, is because you don't get to say goodbye. I finally got to a point where I felt like I was safe and I was loved by someone, and I just feel like it was like just ripped from me. And I'm just like, God, I don't understand. Like, I don't know what I did in life to, deserve these things over and over. And I'm just like, how does someone continue to get through it over and over? Like, how many times does someone have to go through something to find either like love or something? And I just thought, why did you take it away? And, my dad, he's always told me and taught me to pray. And I just feel like, you know, he was with me for a season and he taught me to love and be happy. And we traveled. And before he passed away, he told me, like the first time he he knew he loved me and like things like that. And I think about those things because it was like happy, and it was Valentine's Day right before he passed away. But in my mind, I just constantly think, like, is it done? Is it done? And I always think, okay, like, just keep yourself braced because you don't know what's going to happen next. Like, you don't know if things are just going to keep happening and happening and happening. But, you know, I've continued to pray and I've continued to, talk to God. And I feel like that's been what has helped the most, just praying for peace, because without that, I can honestly say to you today, I don't think I'd be here.
Well, Alyssia, thank you so much for sharing your adversity. And then let's save that topic for the second question for tools part. But I just want to thank you for being here and then sharing your adversity with our audience. And then every degrees of adversities are absolutely different. And, you can't compare one to another. But I just want to let you know that I've had hundreds 100 people, you're 101 um, yes, so everybody had shared so much of pain and adversity, and I just want to let you know that you're not alone. And I'm very very sorry of everything that happened to you. You were kept in hostage, and you're raped, drugged, and you got put on some like chemical in your drink, and then
Yeah.
videotaped, and then um your boyfriend passed away, and it just like seems like it's like happening. And
Yeah.
I'm very sorry that happened. I just want to share with you and our audience that it felt I was kept hostage in a way that between age 8 to 13 my father and two uncles physically, sexually, emotionally, verbally abused me. And then because I was so young in Japan that I had no idea what it was, and they called it like a tickling game or different things. And there was no self advocacy, there's no mental health, there's no PTSD, whatever. So
Yeah.
my story in my book, A Gift from Adversity, it depicts all the things that I went through, but the major thing was that when I was 15, when I told my mom, she didn't believe me, so I tried to kill myself. And I became homeless when I was 18 because she kicked me out. So, it's in an education way of what is your right. So even if you're raped or if you are sexually abused, if there's nobody who understands the magnitude of crime, and if you don't have any support or language around it, you are completely blame shifted and then called crazy.
Yeah.
That's why I tried to kill myself when I was 15. So, I'm very sorry that happened, but at the same time, I'm very grateful for your mom, who are very supportive, your sister who's supportive, and then friends who were supportive of you, and even your ex-boyfriend who got this video and was crying for you. And you know, there is wrong and there is right, and there's nothing in between. There's no gray. Then when you are kept in domestic violence situation, like you have this like sympathy and love, and you get mixed because
Yeah.
there's a honeymoon stage, and there's kind of like a grooming stage, and then sweet stage, and the violent stage, and then it circles, and then the
Right.
um interval gets shorter and shorter. And then you start to feel confused and you start to get brainwashed. And a lot of domestic violence survivor, the statistic shows that it takes 8 to 9 times attempts to leave the relationship. So I just want
Yeah.
to bring that out to you and then to our audience that domestic violence is such an intricate issue, because it's not just
Yes.
getting beaten up. It's more of brainwashed, and how can you get out of that stage that you are in, and then like be objective. No, I have my right, human right, and nobody can violate me, nobody can come into my space. And then you just don't have that, especially after you're having, intercourse and then intimacy, relationship with somebody. So, I just want to bring that up to you, and then thank you for being so brave and courageous to talk about this.
Well, thank you for letting me talk about it and, making it, known. There's so many people that I don't think share it, and they feel, like you said, they're alone, and they feel like they're alone in that situation. And sometimes when you hear, I don't want to say that you're happy that they've went through that, but it's almost like, okay, I'm not the only one. And, you know, there's someone else who can relate to what I'm feeling inside.
Absolutely. So, Alicia, let's move on to our second question, which is the tools that you use to overcome these obstacles. This is my absolute favorite part of the podcast because a lot of guests who went through extreme adversities like yourself, that they share the tools that are very unique and strong and tangible. So, what are the best tools that you can share with the audience that worked for you to overcome these adversities?
Um, I have to say that going to see a psychiatrist and seeing a therapist was a big, huge help for me. I first want to say that because I just feel like there's such a stigma to people going to see a psychiatrist or getting help for mental health. You're automatically put in this category as you're crazy, or she's on meds, she's this or she's that, and it's not that. I still deal with you know things from the first instance of domestic violence when I feel like I'm completely over it. Her dad and I, we get along perfectly fine. We co-parent. She's older, she's going to be 18, you know, and it's been a long road of being like a guinea pig almost. You go through this cycle of like medications. Like the medications work, then they stop. Then they put you on something else, works for a little bit, and then it stops. But I think being able to do things like this and, being able to tell your story, talking about it and just really opening up about how you feel has helped a lot. And I also feel like my daughters, I've never really been a parent to like shield my kids from things. Like I want them to know that these things happen, and you know, I can say that all of, the two instances that happened, yes, that man is to blame. But at the same time, I did make decisions as well that still put me in that predicament. I still, in a sense, put myself there. So I have to take a little bit of responsibility for maybe being naive, like that the domestic violence was going to stop. Or maybe those red flags that I saw in the beginning, I kind of just brushed away because I wanted to be on a date. I just wanted to like get out. And those are the things that I want my kids to look at and be like, okay, mommy went through this. Like, we don't want to go through this. We want to, live a good life and not have all these things come up. And I think another thing has just been God. My dad has been through a lot in his life, and, he's taught me that, at the end of the day, no one is greater than God. He can heal you. He can, help you when you're sad. You just have to really just lean on him and let him, help you. Like, my biggest thing is I don't like nighttime. I still deal with a lot of things at night. I have a lot of trouble going to sleep because things come about in my dreams. And, the biggest thing that I pray for is peace, like just peace, just let me peacefully sleep. Um, I just pray to God to help me just make better decisions in general. I am a mom. I have 3 daughters, and I feel that, one day I won't have to be on medication because I know that I've done it before. When I got pregnant with my second daughter, I took myself off everything. I remember I was like, this is not going to affect my baby. So I did it and I was off for 2 years. And then, the incident happened with that guy, and it just really pushed me over that edge of being able to really, I would say, be able to keep myself focused. My brain had too much at that point to try to manage by myself, I should say. I then needed to go back, and it was like I had to start all over. I just start all over with medication, start all over with a doctor, start all over with a therapist, because it's like you just got over that big thing. And then it's like in the blink of an eye, you're back to square one, trying to like compete with this thing in your brain. And then, those other things start coming up again. And it's like, what is going on? It's like that snowball effect. It just keeps going and going and going. Like that's how my brain feels. So I just think that those are the things, and like you said, having a very supportive family. My family has helped me tremendously, with my kids, because, you know, if they weren't there, I don't know what would have happened to me or my children in times when it was really, really bad. So I think that those.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. So, I just want to share it with you and then our audience. Domestic violence, there's agency I just modeled last year for a fundraiser. It's Love Life Now Foundation. It's the website is lovelifenow.org, and I was one of the survivor model. There are 5 females, 5 males who went through the domestic violence. We all modeled for the fundraiser. We raised $7,500 for other victims to be protected. So there are resources out there. And another thing that I want to share is going to see a therapist, or you know really blocking people, leaning on people who are supportive. Those are so important. In my book, I have a letter, a message part, which is one is for the victim, one is for the perpetrator, and one is for the family and the victim around, family friends around the victim. And then there's another one that I just purchased on Amazon. It's called Directive Behavioral Therapy, DBT deck. It's like the cards, like 101 tangible way to bring your emotional intelligence and then combat the mental health. So it's very unique way, but each card has some kind of wisdom or some kind of directive thing that you can do. So I just want to encourage you to live your life, disengage. And most of the time, the saddest part of it is, as myself, a victim of child sex abuse, domestic violence, I felt I was silenced for a really long time. And I felt I never had a voice. I felt I never had a language to it. So I'm very proud that I published the book and then doing the podcast. I'm very excited that to create this platform. Like you said, there's so much stigma about it, but then you're so right to educate your children, and I do the same, because the red flags and things that you could maybe prevent in the future. And then another thing is, how do you disengage these incidents that can haunt you for a long time.
Right.
So Elizabeth Smart, who was abducted for 9 months, said on a TED Talk, her mom said to the best punishment that you can give to the perpetrator is to not give your second of life to them. Keep smiling, keep living your life because your 9 months is already taken.
Right.
That was really powerful to me. It's easier said than done, but I just want to thank you so much for sharing such a painful, like I felt your pain, a painful story, and then I'm very sorry again that happened to you.
Thank you. This is amazing to be able to just come on here and just, feel. Sometimes you don't feel when you're like in your head and or even on medication, you don't feel. You're blocking it. You're not paying attention, but sometimes you need to feel that. You need to be able to go through those emotions and deal with that pain. Like I'm getting goosebumps right now because not a lot of people make it aware. And I want you to know that it's very appreciated that you're making it aware of people's adversities that they've been through and just letting them be heard because sometimes you don't get to be heard. Like you said, you were a child. I don't, my middle daughter, I don't think she knows how to express herself and she's 8. So being a child, I couldn't even imagine trying to think about in your head to be able to speak on what was going on, So I pray that, you know, you just go super far because this is amazing. And, you know, just know that if there's someone watching today, I hope that they are inspired by you because it's a great, great thing. And there's people like me that need it.
Or you are being brave, and thank you so much for being a part of it. Just want to quickly share with you my guest number one, episode number one. She survived through 2 active shooting situations, one in the middle school, one is at her workplace. She appreciated me for creating this space to talk about active gun shooting surviving experience because they said at some point they stopped talking about it, and then she didn't know where to talk and then where to have a safe place to talk and share what she wanted to share, and it's very important. So, like you said, the domestic violence issue is very hard to talk about, and there's so much stigma about it. But think about it: the people who hurt you, they should be ashamed. They should be silenced, not us, not
Correct.
me, not you. We can't speak about it because they're wrong,
Right.
and they should be ashamed. They should be silenced, muted, and they should never do it again.
Right.
Shame on them, brave on us. So keep sharing your story. And what is my last question is what's the gift that came from your adversity?
I think the gift that came from my adversity was just being strong and being able to look at adversity right in the eyes and just continue to say, I'm still here. These things happened to me when I was like 19, 20 years old. I'm 37 years old today talking to you. And I'm still here. I'm raising 3 beautiful girls. I've had love. I've had like laughter. And I think my gift is just being a powerful woman. I'm able to get through different situations that I never would have thought in a million years would have even happened to me or I would have to even get through. Because where I live, that's not even something that happens. These things just don't happen where I live or to people that live where I live. It's always that thought in the back of your mind, like, wow, these things really happen. In your head, you think this only happens on like Lifetime movie network, and I remember when I was little, my mom, she always loved and she watched those things. And I used to think to myself, why do people do those things to people? Or how do they feel? And now I know, and it's empowering to know that you can still live your life and smile and be a mom, and we're raising beautiful people in this world that are going to continue on with our stories and continue to face adversity just head on.
Thank you so much. Before you go, I just want to share my epigraph, which is the first part of my book, with you and the audience. And then this is my original epigraph. The sooner you can find the courage to accept your adversity, the sooner you can pave a positive path in your precious life.
Beautiful. I agree. I 100% agree. I think you're doing something truly amazing by letting people, like you said, all over the world. You've gotten people all over the world. There's not many people that can say that. And you're letting it be known that these things happen and we all need to be aware. Yeah, I look at different things and I just know that I'm not alone. I know that different things happen at different times in people's lives, but we're all survivors no matter when it happened. No matter what happened to us, we're all survivors, and we're giving the best that we can to our perpetrators by not stopping. We're not stopping in our lives. We're continuing to live. And I want to thank you for letting all of us from all over the world tell our stories and continue to live, because there's been times where I didn't think that I was going to continue to live. I've had a lot of thoughts of just not wanting to be here, but it's podcasts like yours, books like yours that help just keep me going every single day, knowing that, you know what, I have a greater purpose, and I'm here for something. So even though those things keep happening, there's a purpose, and I'm here for a reason. And I have 3 girls to show exactly what I was here for. So thank you for being another fellow mom, showing your kids exactly why you're here, because your book is beautiful and so are you.
Well, thank you very much, Alyssia. And I'm a single mom as well. So let's keep going and then keep making a positive change in the world.
Yes.
But
Thank you so much.
yes. And thank you to our audience. We have more guests coming up. So take a listen for a Gift from Adversity podcast. Thank you again.
Thank you.